Just because you built it doesn't mean you deserve it. My parents handed my brother the house and $2 million company I managed, left me with nothing. I cut them off. A month later, they crawled back begging me for help. Hey Reddit, ever spend your whole life being treated like the backup plan while your sibling gets crowned king for doing nothing? Isaac, 28 male, grew up in that exact situation, working twice as hard, getting half the credit, and being told I should take it as a compliment that my parents didn't need to worry about me. For years, I played along, quietly stacking skills, connections, and receipts. Then one night, everything came to a head. And let's just say I wasn't the one left begging. You ever notice how in some families there's the chosen one, and then there's everybody else? Yeah, that was my childhood in Fairfield, Ohio. My brother Omid was the golden boy. 3 years older, loud, liked to flex like he was the next big thing. And me? I was the kid who actually did the work, but apparently didn't make enough noise to get applause. The favoritism was never subtle either. Christmas was supposed to be exciting, but for me it wasn't. Omid unwrapped a brand new gaming console one year. Whole family gathered around, clapping while he plugged it in like he'd just won the lottery. My gift? A stack of educational books. We thought you'd like these, you're the smart one. Translation. Omid gets fun. I get homework disguised as a present. I didn't cry about it though. I just thought, okay, they've made their choice. He's the entertainer. I'm the workhorse. Fine. Let's see where that gets us. See, I learned early that feelings don't get you anywhere in my family. So instead of sulking, I started treating it like a chessboard. They wanted Omid to be the king? Fine. I'd be the guy moving all the pieces behind the scenes. By the time I was 13, Dad had me working weekends in the family's construction business. Not swinging hammers, of course. That glory was for Omid. No, I was in the office organizing invoices, figuring out scheduling software, basically doing free admin work before I even knew what a resume was. Meanwhile, Omid at 16 would roll in late, toss some lumber around for an hour, then disappear to hang out with his buddies. Guess who got praised for working hard that day? Yeah, not me. It wasn't just at work either. School was the same. I was pulling straight A's without breaking a sweat, already tutoring other kids in math. Omid barely scraped by, coasting off excuses like, school's not for everyone. Mom would smile and say, that's okay, honey, you have people skills. I wanted to laugh every time I heard that. Omid's people skills were just him knowing how to talk loud and act confident while saying absolutely nothing. Basically, he was born to be a politician or a bad salesman. But here's the thing. I didn't take it personally. I played the long game. Every time they handed him something shiny, I treated it like another data point. Another reminder that I couldn't expect fairness, so I'd have to outthink them. If Omid was going to spend his afternoons lifting weights at the gym and flexing in the mirror, fine. I'd be learning how contracts worked, how supply chains functioned, how to actually run a business. Funny side note, Omid once tried to mentor me. I was 12, he was 15. He swaggered into my room one day, dropped onto my bed like he owned it, and said, listen, little bro, if you want to be successful, you gotta be confident. Like me. Girls don't care about grades, they care about vibes. Then, he winked and walked out like he'd just given me the secrets of life. I remember looking down at the homework I was doing and thinking, this dude's gonna peak in high school, and I'll be running the show when he's still bragging about varsity football practice. The thing about Omid is, he wasn't dumb. He was sneaky dumb. The kind of guy who thought cutting corners was genius. One time, Dad gave him responsibility for loading tools into the truck for a big job. Omid tossed half the stuff in without checking the list, then went off to flirt with some girl down the street. Next morning at the site, half the equipment was missing. Instead of chewing him out, Dad actually said, at least you showed initiative. Meanwhile, I was the one called in to drive 2 hours back to the warehouse to fix it. Initiative my ass. Mom was no better. She had this delusional way of spinning Omid's screw-ups into life lessons. If Omid forgot to do something, she'd say, he's just creative. He doesn't like rules. If I ever slipped up, Isaac, I expect better from you. You know how to be responsible. They thought that was a compliment. What it really meant was Omid got a free pass for being careless, while I was held to adult standards at age 10. It all boiled down to this unspoken rule. Omid was the favorite, the face of the family, the one they bragged about at barbecues even when there was nothing to brag about. I was the backup plan, the guy expected to quietly keep everything running. And you know what? That didn't make me bitter. It made me sharper. Every time they overlooked me, I thought, good, stay blind. While you're busy inflating Omid's ego, I'm building skills you don't even realize I'm stacking. I wasn't chasing their approval. I was stockpiling leverage. Looking back, I think that's what saved me. If I had been desperate for their praise, I would have burned out trying to compete with Omid in their rigged game. Instead, I stepped out of the game altogether. I didn't need to be king of their tiny little castle. I'd build my own kingdom brick by brick. By the end of middle school, I had already memorized half of Dad's business playbook. Contracts, scheduling, client management, I was absorbing it all. Omid was busy posting gym selfies and acting like Fairfield's hottest catch. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. So, yeah, I grew up in Omid's shadow. But shadows don't scare me. They hide the guy who's quietly planning. While Omid was busy playing Golden Boy, I was learning how to make myself indispensable. And one day, I knew I'd cash all those lessons in. That thought became real the moment I opened the envelope my senior year of high school. A full scholarship to Stanford's engineering program. Not community college, not a local state school. Stanford. A ticket out of Ohio and straight into the big leagues. That night at dinner, I told them. I dropped it casually. I got into Stanford. Full ride. Silence. You'd think I just told them I planned on joining the circus. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. Son, that's impressive. But you know the business needs you here. We're expanding. With your head for numbers and organization, we can't afford to lose you. Mom chimed in right after, nodding like some backup singer. And Stanford so far? California? You'll be across the country. What about family? What about helping your father? Meanwhile, Omid was hiding a grin behind his glass of milk, like he'd just won something. The guy who nearly failed algebra looked relieved that I might actually sabotage myself. Inside, I was boiling. Outside, I kept a poker face. I wanted to fire back. I wanted to ask why Omid's one-semester dropout from community college was understandable. But me getting a full ride to one of the top schools in the country was suddenly a family problem. But I didn't. I knew if I fought too hard, they'd dig their heels in. So I played it differently. I let them talk. I let Dad hit me with his sacrifice for the family speech, Mom with her guilt trip tone about staying close, and Omid with his fake supportive nods. Then I nodded like I was actually considering it. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The old me who still hoped for recognition might have folded under that pressure. But me who'd been playing the long game? I saw it for what it was, a trap. So I spun it. A week later, I told them I'd turned down Stanford and accepted a scholarship at the Miami University. It was still solid, still respected, but local enough to keep working at the company. Dad clapped me on the back like I'd just saved the family. That's the right choice, son. Omid may not have the head for school, but you've got the business sense. The company needs that. Inside, I was grinning. Not because I wanted their approval, but because they just handed me exactly what I wanted. More time inside the business, more access to operations, more training for free. I wasn't planning to fly out of the nest. I was planning to build my own damn nest right next to theirs. That's when Jennifer came into the picture. We met at a networking event my sophomore year. We started talking about sustainable building practices, of all things. She actually listened when I explained the systems I'd been putting in place at the company. When I told her I was basically running half the operations while my brother was off chasing girls and investments, she raised an eyebrow. Do you notice how they treat you? She asked later, after meeting my family at a barbecue. Your dad spent the whole time bragging about how Omid charmed some client. Meanwhile, you're the one who actually landed the contract. Doesn't that bother you? Old me might have said yes. Instead, I shrugged. They can hype him up all they want. I'm the one stacking the wins. Jennifer smirked. Good. Because you're either going to run that company or you're going to run one bigger. That stuck with me. That's when the secret plan fully clicked into place. On the surface, I was loyal. I played the part of the responsible son, the one who sacrificed Stanford for the family. But under the table, I was laying foundation stones for something else. I started using Miami University not just as school, but as my networking hub. Professors with industry contacts, guest speakers who ran their own firms, internships outside the family company, under the radar. I shook hands, collected business cards, and built a quiet list of allies who respected me, not my last name. Meanwhile, back at the family business, I kept modernizing. I was basically turning it into a machine that even Omid couldn't screw up completely, at least not yet. Secretly, I told myself every night, fine, I'll build their company, but I'll build mine too. When the time comes, they'll realize they weren't holding me back. They were just training me for my own takeover. By the time most college kids were struggling through finals and figuring out what to do with their lives, I already had two things Omid never would: leverage and patience. The crown they refused to give me? I wasn't waiting for it anymore. I was forging my own. By sophomore year at university, I was running half the company without a title. I'd built an inventory system that tracked every nail, every beam, every delivery. The crews loved it because jobs stopped getting delayed. Suppliers liked it because invoices were accurate. Dad pretended not to notice, but clients did. Every time they called the office, they asked for me, not Omid. The big break came with the municipal courthouse project. It was the kind of contract that put a local firm on the map. I'd spent weeks preparing the bid, double-checking numbers, building a lean timeline. At the presentation, Omid strolled in late, shaking hands like a politician. When it came time to present, he tried to grab the spotlight. "We're confident we can handle this project. I've been working closely with the team," I cut in. "Actually, here's the breakdown of the projected costs and deadlines. If you'll look at page 12, you'll see how we saved the city almost 18% compared to the nearest competitor." The city officials leaned forward, impressed. Omid's jaw clenched. At the end of the meeting, the lead commissioner shook my hand and said, "Isaac, we'll be looking forward to working with you." Not Omid. Me. 2 weeks later, we had the contract. Omid didn't celebrate. He sulked. It didn't take long for him to screw something up. On a mid-sized commercial renovation, he decided to take initiative and ordered steel beams without checking specs. Wrong gauge, wrong length, wrong everything. By the time the mistake hit the site, crews had lost 2 days and the client was furious. Dad called me in like it was my mess. "Fix this." So I did. I renegotiated with the supplier, swapped the beams, and rescheduled crews to make up the time. Cost the company almost nothing in the end. The client even thanked me for being so professional. At the follow-up meeting, the client said, "Isaac, glad you were running things. Otherwise, I'd have pulled the contract." He said it right in front of Omid. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Watching Omid's face go red was enough. But Omid wasn't just careless. He was sneaky. A few months later, I noticed something off in a bid sheet I'd prepared for a warehouse project. The numbers didn't add up. Someone had inflated costs by almost 30%, making it look like I didn't know how to budget. Took me 10 minutes to trace the changes back to Omid's login. I didn't confront him. Instead, I made a copy, saved the logs, and started a folder. Emails, reports, timestamps. Every time Omid tampered with something, I documented it. Receipts were better than rage. Omid thought he'd gotten away with it. A week later, he swaggered into the office, patting me on the back. "Tough break on that bid, bro. Don't worry, you'll get the next one." I smiled. "Sure, Omid. Thanks for the pep talk." He had no idea I was stacking ammo. The courthouse job pushed our revenue up big time. Crews were busy, suppliers respected us, and I'd even started pushing green practices, recycling waste, using energy-efficient materials that drew in new high-end clients. Everyone in the industry was starting to see us differently. Everyone except Dad. At the annual regional contractors banquet, we were sitting at a round table with half the industry watching. One of the commissioners stood up and toasted me. "To Isaac, the guy who saved the courthouse project from collapsing before it even started. Outstanding work." Applause. People clapped, raised their glasses, looked at me like I was the name on the company sign. And then Dad opened his mouth. "Yes, Isaac's good with numbers, but Omid's charisma is the real reason clients trust us." The room went quiet. A few people exchanged looks. Omid leaned back with that smug grin, soaking it in. I didn't argue. I just nodded, lifted my glass, and thought, "Sure, keep believing that. I've got the numbers, the contracts, and the receipts. You've got his smile. Let's see which pays the bills." By the end of that year, the company's revenue had doubled. Everyone on the inside knew who was running things. Omid kept showing up late, making big promises he couldn't deliver, sneaking around like a wannabe hustler. I kept cleaning up, winning deals, and documenting everything he touched. He thought he was the golden boy. I knew he was a liability waiting to implode. And I was patient, because when the bomb went off, I wanted every piece of evidence in my hands. And by the time Dad called us all over for a family dinner to discuss the company's future, my folder was thicker than Omid's biceps. Jennifer and I pulled into my parents' driveway that night, and I already knew this wasn't going to be some kumbaya family gathering. Dad had sounded too formal on the phone. "I want everyone present. It's time to talk about leadership moving forward." Leadership. Translation. Someone was about to get screwed, and it wasn't going to be Omid. Inside, the table was already set with all of Omid's favorite foods. Ribeye, garlic mashed potatoes, Mom's famous chocolate pie. I had to laugh. I could have brought home a Nobel Prize, and she'd still ask if Omid wanted extra gravy first. Omid strolled in 20 minutes late, wearing a jacket he definitely couldn't afford on his own, grinning like a guy who'd already been handed the prize. No apology, no explanation, just a smug "sup, fam" as he dropped into his seat. We ate in small talk, projects, community gossip, Omid retelling gym stories like they mattered. Then Dad cleared his throat and leaned back like a judge about to deliver a verdict. As you know, I've been thinking about stepping back from day-to-day operations, he said. The company's grown, and it's time to secure our legacy. I sat straighter. Years of grinding, sacrificing, and carrying Omid's dead weight. This was the moment they'd either recognize it or prove, once and for all, they never would. Dad smiled proudly at Omid, which is why Omid will be taking over as president and majority shareholder. Silence. The words rang in my ears. He wasn't finished. Your mother and I have also decided he'll inherit this house and the majority of our assets. Isaac, you'll receive 10% of the company, as a minority partner, under Omid's direction. Omid leaned back, smug grin stretching ear to ear. Mom beamed like he'd just cured cancer. Jennifer's hand tightened on mine under the table. I forced the words out. Working under Omid? Dad gave me this pitying look, the kind that says, you should be grateful for scraps. You've always been capable, Isaac. Omid needs the security more than you do. He deserves it. There it was. Deserves it. The two words they'd been feeding me my entire life. I laughed. Actually laughed. The table went quiet. Congrats, Omid, I said finally. You just inherited a time bomb. Omid blinked. What the hell does that mean? I stood, scraping the chair back. It means I quit. Dad slammed his hand on the table. Don't be ridiculous. You can't just walk away. Mom's voice went syrupy, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. Isaac, please, don't make this dramatic. Family comes first. Omid smirked. See, Dad? This is why you made the right choice. He's too emotional. I leaned over the table, looking Omid dead in the eye. No. What's emotional is pretending you're qualified for something you didn't earn. What's emotional is Dad throwing the keys to the kingdom at the guy who couldn't even handle ordering steel beams without screwing it up. Omid's face flushed red. Shut up, Isaac. You'll still have a job. You can keep doing all the boring paperwork crap you love. I smiled coldly. No, you can do your own paperwork. Let's see how long the company lasts without me. I walked out, Jennifer right behind me. The next morning, I got to the office before anyone else. I boxed up my certifications, my awards, and downloaded copies of the templates, frameworks, and contacts I had personally built over the years. Then, I logged out, handed in my admin credentials, and left them to run the place on their own. They still had the systems, just not me holding them together. By the time Dad showed up, red-faced and shouting, I was stacking the last box in my truck. What the hell do you think you're doing? He barked. Exactly what I said I'd do, I replied. Leaving. Be reasonable. Where will you go? What will you do? Everything you know is here. I stopped, turned, and really looked at him. For the first time, he didn't look like a man in control. He looked small. Everything I built is here, I corrected him. And you just gave it to Omid. My knowledge, my systems, my clients, that all leaves with me. You can't just walk away from family, he insisted. I smirked. Watch me. I lifted the last box, headed for the door, then paused with my hand on the knob. Oh, and Dad? You wanted me chained here forever. Instead, you just set me free. I didn't wait for his reply. I walked out of the office, out of the company, and out of the hollow illusion that any of them ever valued me. For the first time in my life, the weight wasn't on my shoulders. It was on theirs, and I was finally free to build something they could never touch. The first week after walking out felt like stepping off a cliff. I didn't have a salary, no office, no team, just Jennifer, a laptop, and a folder full of ideas I'd built over the years. But if I knew one thing, it was that the systems, the clients, and the suppliers hadn't been loyal to Dalton Construction. They'd been loyal to me. Jennifer and I spent nights in our apartment drafting a plan. She built out the branding and website. I filed the LLC paperwork. We called it Steelmark Management. Clean, simple, straight to the point. At first, we weren't swinging hammers. We were the brains. Project oversight, scheduling, vendor coordination. Our pitch: we'd run projects smarter, faster, leaner as an owner's rep. At first, nothing happened. I was refreshing my inbox every 10 minutes, wondering if I'd miscalculated. Then, 3 weeks in, my phone rang. It was Greg, a supplier I'd known for years. Isaac, he said, I'm done with your brother. He tried to stretch our payment terms to 90 days and demanded discounts on top. We only worked with him because of you. You got your own shop now? I grinned. Yeah, Greg. Steelmark Management. Good. I've got 3 clients who need project oversight. You free to meet? That meeting lit the fuse. Within a month, I'd signed 2 contracts. By the end of the quarter, word was spreading. Omid was running the old firm into the ground, and I was the guy to call if you wanted things done right. The first major showdown came with the university expansion project. Huge money, big visibility, the kind of deal every regional contractor drooled over. Steelmark wasn't bidding as the builder yet. We were up for the construction manager at risk role, basically the watchdog making sure contractors hit deadlines and budgets. Dalton was trying to land it as the GC. The bid presentation was scheduled in a downtown boardroom. I walked in with Jennifer at my side and a binder of detailed timelines, cost projections, and efficiency models. 10 minutes later, Omid swaggered in wearing a suit that looked 2 sizes too tight, flashing a grin like he already owned the place. When it was his turn, he rambled about vision and legacy, tossing buzzwords around like confetti. Then it was my turn. I laid out the numbers, the systems, the proof. Half the room leaned forward, nodding, taking notes. When the committee announced later that week Steelmark had won the contract, Omid lost it. He stormed out of the room while I shook hands with the board. For me, it wasn't just a win. It was a public execution. Omid wasn't done, though. A month later, I got served with papers. He was suing me for stealing clients and intellectual property. I showed up in court with my receipts. The judge went through everything. Emails proving clients reached out to me directly, documents showing I'd never been paid as an executive, contracts that were my original work. Omid looked like an amateur trying to punch above his weight. At one point, the judge even said, "Mr. Dalton, this case looks less like theft and more like sour grapes." The gallery chuckled. Omid turned red. Case dismissed. When it was over, Jennifer and I walked out cool as ice. Partners asked for a comment. I gave them one line. Funny how clients know who really does the work. That quote ended up in the local business section. And just when I thought things couldn't tilt further in my favor, the inheritance twist landed. I got a call from an attorney's office representing my late grandfather, my dad's dad. He'd passed years earlier, before the company really grew, but apparently he'd left behind a set of conditional trusts. One of them was in my name. The lawyer explained it. Your grandfather admired your work ethic. He set aside land and capital, but it could only be released to you if you were running your own business, independent of your father's. I sat there stunned. All those years I thought nobody in the family saw me. Turns out the one man who mattered had. The trust gave me ownership of a prime piece of land on the edge of the city and a financial cushion big enough to finally scale Steelmark from oversight into full construction. Up until then, we were the watchdogs making sure projects didn't collapse. Now, we could be the ones actually building them. Jennifer squeezed my arm as we walked out of that office. Your grandfather knew. He saw it before anyone else. With that inheritance, everything accelerated. I leased office space, hired 2 project managers, and brought on an administrative assistant to handle the contracts and invoices. Steelmark wasn't just me with a laptop anymore. It was a team, a real company. Meanwhile, Dalton Construction was bleeding. Clients fled, suppliers refused terms. Omid's charm routine wore thin. He showed up at a Chamber of Commerce mixer one night while I was networking with potential partners. I watched him work the room, trying to convince people the company was restructuring. Nobody bit. They gravitated toward me instead. By the end of that year, Steelmark was signing deals faster than I could process them. We'd moved into larger offices, our name was popping up in industry publications, and Jennifer and I started talking about long-term plans. Marriage, expansion into other cities. Landing the university job and a logistics hub build-out back-to-back, plus the trust assets, is what let us scale to 50 heads in just 2 years. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. I was thriving. Omid was flailing. And the best part? I hadn't even played all my cards yet. Because while Omid was busy trying to smear my name in public, I was sitting on a mountain of receipts, showing just how incompetent and reckless he really was. The time to cash them in was coming. By the next spring, Dalton Construction was a sinking ship. The courthouse job had blown past deadlines. 2 commercial contracts were already tied up in litigation, and word spread fast that the company couldn't be trusted. Suppliers started demanding cash up front. Crews quit mid-project. Clients walked away mid-renovation rather than deal with the chaos. The name that once carried weight in Fairfield was now a punchline. I knew things had gone nuclear when I opened the paper and saw an article titled, "Regional Contractor Dalton, Construction Faces Bankruptcy." The photo underneath showed my dad and Omid at a groundbreaking ceremony, both looking stiff, like they knew the walls were closing in. A week later, the first text came. "Isaac, the company is struggling. We need $50,000 to cover payroll and expenses. Family helps family. Can you loan it to us? That was from Mom. I stared at the screen and almost laughed. After the leadership dinner, after handing Omid the company, after treating me like a spare part, now I was the savior? My reply was short and final. You gave him the crown. Let him pay the kingdom's debts. I blocked her number right after. Didn't stop them, though. They emailed Jennifer and even showed up at our office asking for a meeting. 2 days later, Omid came storming into Steelmark's offices. He didn't even check in at reception, just barged through like he still owned the world. Except this version of Omid didn't look like the golden boy. He looked like a guy who'd been dragged through a blender, wrinkled shirt, 5 o'clock shadow, bloodshot eyes. He slammed my office door shut. We need to talk. I didn't even stand up. Do we? He collapsed into the chair across from me, hands gripping his knees. The company's failing. Dad had to remortgage the house. The bank's breathing down our necks. We're losing everything. You know how to fix this, Isaac. You built the systems, the relationships. Just come back. Help us. I leaned back, cool as ice. So let me get this straight. You got the company, the house, the assets, because you deserved it. And now that you've run it into the ground, you want me to swoop in and clean up your mess? His voice cracked. It's still your company, too. Dad gave you 10%. I laughed. I turned that down, remember? I walked away with scraps. Exactly what you and Dad planned. The difference is, I built something while you burned everything to ash. That got under his skin. You always think you're better than me. You could have stayed and made it work. No, I said, my tone sharp. I could have stayed and wasted another decade carrying you while Dad called you the charismatic one. The mistake wasn't Dad's. It was mine. Wasting years saving you from your own stupidity. He shot to his feet, fists clenched. So what? You're just going to sit there and laugh while we lose everything. Pretty much. I stood too, slow and deliberate, making sure I was taller over the desk. But hey, maybe I've got a spot for janitors. At least then you'd be cleaning real messes instead of creating new ones. His face twisted. Screw you, Isaac! He shoved the chair back and stormed out, slamming my office door so hard the frame rattled. 2 guards followed him down the hall, making sure he didn't come back. My staff pretended to work, but I saw the smirks. Everyone knew who really ran Fairfield now. That was the last time Omid tried to talk to me face to face. A week later, my parents requested a sit-down. Jennifer told me not to bother, but I wanted closure. We met at a private room in a downtown restaurant. They came in looking older, defeated. Mom had that forced half-smile she used whenever she wanted to smooth things over. Dad's shoulders sagged. The man who used to bark orders looked beaten. Dad went first. Isaac, we made mistakes. The business is in serious trouble. We need you back. Just for a while. To stabilize things. Mom leaned in, voice soft. We're family. Surely that still means something. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Dad opened it, and his face drained. Inside were copies of everything. Bid sheets Omid had tampered with, inflated numbers under his login, emails showing supplier complaints, timestamps of when he tried to sabotage me. This is what your heir has been doing for years, I said flatly. This is the man you crowned. Mom flipped through it, whispering, Oh my God. Dad's jaw worked as he scanned each page. For once, he didn't have a defense. I stood up. You made your choice that night at dinner. You gave him everything. Don't crawl back now that the castle's burning down. Dad looked up, voice rough. We were wrong. I shook my head. No, you weren't wrong. You were blind. And now you're broke. There's a difference. Mom reached for my sleeve. Isaac, please. One last chance. We can fix this together. I pulled back. No more chances. I gave you decades. You wasted them on Omid. You don't get a do-over. I picked up my coat and turned for the door. Dad's voice cracked one last time. Isaac, don't walk away. I looked back over my shoulder. I already did, the day you said he deserved it. And then I left, leaving them at that table with Omid's failures staring them in the face. The receipts weren't just paperwork anymore. They were proof. Proof I'd been the foundation. Proof that without me, they had nothing. And that's exactly what they deserved. 2 years later, Steelmark wasn't just a company. It was a statement. What started with a laptop on my kitchen table had turned into a firm with over 50 employees, multi-million-dollar contracts, and my name on every shortlist that mattered. The city didn't just know Steelmark. They respected it. To cement it, we built a new headquarters, a 3-story glass and steel monument downtown, with Steelmark's logo carved in brushed metal across the entrance. The opening night wasn't just an office party, it was a declaration. We invited clients, suppliers, city officials, and the local press. Champagne, cameras, spotlights, the works. Jennifer stood at my side, stunning as always, smiling in that way that told me she'd always believed this was coming. She handled press questions like she was born for it, which honestly she was. The night was perfect, until the ghosts walked in. Omid, my parents, they weren't invited, but there they were at the glass doors, looking in like outsiders. Omid had lost everything that once made him the golden boy. He was pale, twitchy, suit hanging off him like a borrowed costume. Mom clutched her purse to her chest, her face drawn tight. Dad looked older than I'd ever seen him. Smaller, almost fragile. Security blocked them, but I raised a hand. Let them in. The room hushed as they stepped into the lobby. Clients, employees, even the reporters turned. Everyone knew the story. Everyone knew Dalton Construction had collapsed into bankruptcy, drowning in lawsuits and debt. And now, here they were, the fallen royalty, walking into my kingdom. Dad tried to speak with authority, but it cracked. Isaac, we need to talk. I raised my glass. Then talk. Nothing to hide here. Mom's eyes shimmered. We lost everything. The house, the savings. We just need... I cut her off. You had everything. You gave it all to Omid. He burned it down. That's not on me. Omid stepped forward, his voice sharp, desperate. You think you're better than me? Steelmark wouldn't exist without what I built at Dalton. The crowd stiffened. A couple reporters leaned in, pens ready. I smiled, calm. Funny you said that, Omid, because I brought proof. I signaled to the AV tech. The projector behind me flicked on. Slide after slide lit up the screen. Omid's tampered bid sheets, emails with suppliers complaining about his screw-ups, project budgets he'd altered under his login. Every piece of sabotage I'd documented years earlier. The room buzzed. Reporters scribbled. Clients murmured. Omid's face went red. You forged that, he shouted, voice breaking. Nice try, I said coolly. Those came from the server logs I'd archived before leaving. Signed, time-stamped, verified. My lawyer pre-cleared what I could show publicly and what I'd kept. Nothing proprietary, just logs and my own frameworks. They've been sitting in a folder for years, waiting for this moment. The silence was brutal. Omid opened his mouth, then shut it again. Even Dad's face had gone pale. Mom covered her mouth with her hand. A client in the crowd muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. Explains why Dalton went under. That one line hit harder than anything I could have said. Omid's composure snapped. He lunged forward, pointing at me. This is all your fault. You poisoned everyone against me. You stole. Security stepped in, blocking him. The room didn't flinch. Nobody rushed to defend him. For once, everyone saw him for exactly what he was. The guy who coasted, sabotaged, and finally imploded. Dad tried one last plea, his voice trembling. Isaac, we're still your blood. That has to mean something. I shook my head. That name you gave away the night you told me he deserved it? That wasn't family. That was delusion. Steelmark is my name now. My legacy. Mom whispered through tears. Please, one last chance. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so the words cut. No more chances. You gave them all to him, and now you've got nothing left to give. I nodded at security. Omid fought as they dragged him back, shouting curses, trying to twist free. Mom sobbed quietly. Dad didn't resist. He just let himself be pulled out, shoulders slumped, a king without a crown. The glass doors shut behind them. The room exhaled. Conversations picked back up. Reporters scribbled headlines they'd publish the next morning. My employees looked at me with something close to pride. Jennifer slid her arm through mine. You good? She whispered. I raised my glass. Better than good. This is what family looks like now. I gave a short speech then, standing in front of the Steelmark logo. I didn't talk about revenge. I didn't talk about them. I talked about respect, about loyalty, about building something real with people who had your back. The applause echoed in the glass lobby, louder than anything I'd ever heard at Dalton. They thought Omid was the king, but I was always the throne. And now the whole city knew it. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.